All right. Hello, bonjour, and welcome, everybody. My name is Milena Audino. I'm the Business Information Officer here at the World Trade Center, Winnipeg. I would like to begin today's webinar with our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we are gathered on the lands of Treaty 1 territory and that Manitoba is located on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Innu, Denesilan, and Dakota Oye nations. We acknowledge we're also on the homelands of the Red River Métis and that northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. The World Trade Center Winnipeg team respects the treaties that were made on these territories and acknowledges the harms and mistakes of the past and present throughout our nation. Thank you for joining our webinar, Traceability Standards from Country of Origin to Destination, Learn How Barcodes Can Help, which will be presented by Alain Picard, GS1 Global Standards. And just before we begin, I just want to share a few housekeeping items. So number one, please send all of the webinar questions directly in the chat box, and we will try to answer as many as we can. We also will have a Q&A session at the end. And then lastly, you will receive a PDF copy and a recording of this presentation within the next week. So now it's time to start our webinar. I would like to introduce you to Alain Picard. So Alain is an advisor with the community engagement team at GS1 Canada and works to support small businesses and entrepreneurs to get their products to market quickly and efficiently. As a previous business owner in wholesale packaging and distribution, he truly enjoys sharing his experience and building relationships, which bodes well in this role. Welcome, Alain. The floor is all yours.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Milena. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much once again for this great opportunity. You know, I always enjoy our exchanges. We had a discussion a little while ago, and it's always great, very positive, and you folks are a great group to work with. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay. What we're going to cover today has a lot to do with traceability aspects of what we do, and really what our strength is traceability always attached to product and product data. All right. So as a holistic approach, what we essentially do in our world in global standards is ensure that the products are properly identified, captured, and shared throughout the network, both nationally and internationally. All right. So what we're going to cover today has a lot to do with where we are, where we're going, and all the next changes that are going to come into play, especially when it revolves around exporting. So we'll start off with an introduction of GS1 Canada, what we do, why we do things, and how it fits into the supply chain. We'll look at some barcodes, where the traditional linear barcode is and where it's going with 2D, two-dimensional barcodes in CPG. We'll look at exports and considerations, how that might affect some of you in your different sectors, and some tools and resources for success that tie everything in terms of getting your products from point A to point B, C, D, E, all the way to the consumer. All right. So here we go. 50 years of the barcode. 50 years ago, the first barcode was affixed on a pack of Wrigley's gum. And the main premise for that was to speed up the checkout lines and start to have somewhat of an inventory control, which was non-existent at that time. Everything was priced individually. You had stickers. If the price changed, you had to affix more stickers. Very manually involved. We have evolved all the way through automation, different scanning techniques, QR codes, and now 2D codes. So it's been 50 years now already in the making. So how do we fit into this, and how were we introduced initially 50 years ago? We are a global, neutral, not-for-profit organization. We operate under a member organization throughout the world, 120 of them, serving 150 countries. So GS1 Canada is one member organization of the entire global network. All right. We deal in 25 industry sectors, which pretty well covers everything. 10 billion barcodes are scanned every day and all the rest of it that we have come so accustomed to basically taking for granted in scanning and getting information on our products. Okay. 4 core principles make up those global standards, both from a reference standpoint and a use standpoint. It all starts with identifying each product uniquely. Those unique identifiers are captured through barcode symbology, and we're going to talk about that on where we're at, where we're going to go. Through that barcode is captured the data that is then shared for everyone to have access within that supply chain. And then the use standards are basically used for different applications, be it transport, logistics, inventory control, right up to the POS systems at the retailers and or marketplaces that the brand owners deal with. All right, so 4 core principles. We're really going to focus in on the capturing and the sharing of data. Why standards matter and why they've become so critical in starting right at the end of the line with the consumers. We look today, because of technological advance, for more information. Tell me more about the product. Where did it come from? Who actually made it? Is it sustainably produced? How do I use it? What are the warranties? Everything attached to the product right now is meant to be accessible, easy. The brand owners, to be able to supply that information, need to have the platforms, consistent platforms, to enter that information. And that's where we come in all the facets. And the retailers, the buyers, and so on and so forth, need that information to be able to list the product, to have the necessary information on hand to be able to know what they're selling, and make it efficiently possible to move those products along at the retail end. So those are the areas that have been here, but have been enhanced tremendously over the years because of technological advance and the need to provide more information, accurate data on the products. Right? Okay, to bring this all into perspective, we've got a first video to show you on the power that surrounds those standards.
Who is GS1 Canada? GS1 Canada helps Canadian businesses succeed every day and everywhere around the globe. GS1 is a not-for-profit organization that develops, implements, and manages supply chain standards in multiple industries and in more than 150 countries. We provide industry with the tools, trust, and confidence they need to achieve business goals. The GS1 system of standards are built on 4 core principles, enabling industry to identify, capture, share, and use perpetually cleansed, accurate, and trusted product information. Our suite of solutions allow trading partners to speak to one another using one powerful global language of business. In the healthcare and pharmacy sector, GS1 standards help enable patient safety and improve the quality and efficiency of the healthcare system. Food service and grocery trading partners use GS1 Global Standards and registries to share brand certified product, marketing, and nutritional information and images. This enhances consumers' safety and confidence in the food they eat and in the stores they shop at. Today, organizations recognize that effective data management tools are critical for business success. Canadian retailers are collaborating with their general merchandise and hardlines trading partners on the use of GS1 Canada product data management services to get products onto shelves and into consumers' hands faster. These tools also enhance product recall processes and improve marketing and advertising capabilities. Global standards, trusted data from an organization that is constantly innovating. Canadian business runs on GS1 services and business solutions.
Okay, I mentioned before, we have 120 member organizations. There are differences in service offerings in many of these countries. We pride ourselves in Canada in having the third most services offered out of those 120. So we cover an enormous realm of services offered through the GS1 Canada network. So those four industry roles, because keep in mind, we are led by the industry. GS1 Canada doesn't invent the standards or implement standards. The industry dictates the pace through regulatory bodies, and then we have the systems and the platforms in place to bring it all in together to create that consistency of standard. All right, so we become standards developers based on industry need. We work with the community. The community dictates what the need is holistically. And then we educate as we go along, much like we're doing today, whether you're a small operation or a large conglomerate, the education piece remains the same. It's just more volume and more product to manage. But at the end of the day, there's a constant education piece that takes place because of the evolution and technology and so on. And then the implementation partnering comes when we've established all the criteria to be able to bring a new system or platform or regulation into play. We are used as implementation partners within the industry, right? Okay, some of the areas that we support business. NFTs, if you're in the food business, your nutrition facts tables, your front of pack labeling. These are the types of regulations that we have and receive from, in this case, Health Canada and the CFIA, on new regulations coming down the pipe. So our platforms get adjusted to be able to enter the required information and assist brand owners to be able to know that, hey, starting in X amount of time or X amount of period, we have a new regulation come into play, and your platform has been adjusted accordingly. The education piece, as we spoke to, goes throughout, and it starts with the small business with subscription resources attached to the packages, and there's all kinds of education pieces that are there, especially for newcomers. We also have our mentorship project, which we have free one-on-one sessions, a lot of them that I do for pre and new GS1 subscribers. Don't have to be a GS1 subscriber. If you're starting off and you're not quite sure and you want a little bit more information, I do one-on-one sessions free of charge to help get you up and going and answer as many questions as possible. And then we have our LinkedIn community group that we deal with, a small business group that are in on LinkedIn, and we share all kinds of information. We have our Ask the Expert sessions on a regular basis. All right, so the support mechanisms are way beyond just the technical. It's the hands-on and the practical as well. Milena, any questions on who we are, what we do, and how we fit in before we get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty?
There are no questions so far, so I think you're explaining everything perfectly.
Very good. Well, thank you. All right. Barcodes, product ID. Really, that's where it all stems from. Okay. Now, I'm certainly not here to confuse anyone on the call. This is a little bit overwhelming, but at the end of the day, I'm only showing you this for you to put yourself in the journey of that coffee mug, where it starts, where it goes, how it's transported, distributed, palletized into a distribution center, out the distribution center, all the way to the consumer. Every step of the way has a process, and the product, as it moves through that supply chain, has different needs and applications by the different folks that move that product all the way to the consumer. So we'll put the emphasis here on, you see, GLN and GTN. All right, we'll put the emphasis on those two areas because that's really where it starts from, the product identification uniquely. All right, and we'll come back to this chart. Let's place the emphasis right away on the importance of product identification and how it works.
Think about the way consumers shop today. Sure, we still go to physical stores, but we also search, compare, and buy online through our smartphones, laptops, and tablets. Selection used to be limited to what we could physically find and buy. Now we have the world at our fingertips. But how does Kelly know that what she's finding in her online search is really what she's looking for? And how can Sweetie Pie brands and Darcy's make sure that their products are discoverable and accurately represented across all channels? The times may have changed, but the answer remains the same. Unique identification through the use of GS1 standards. In the physical world, the number used in a UPC barcode actually represents a global trade item number, or GTIN, that uniquely identifies that item all around the world. With this kind of unique identification, trading partners can exchange information and accurately throughout the chain and with their consumers. In today's omni-channel world, products appear on physical and digital shelves. But a product's digital data is not always what it should be. Search engines are dealing with product data that is not structured consistently, so Kelly gets different results depending on how and where she searches. There is no way for search engines to find the right products each and every time, let alone look for duplicates or flag incorrect information. Some products appear when others don't, and even when Kelly gets to the right product, the quality of the information can be incorrect, incomplete, or irrelevant. It's a hassle for consumers like Kelly, and it's a liability for brand owners and retailers. Proprietary numbering systems confuse matters even further. Without a standardized global system, the same identification number can yield very different results. It seems complicated, but there's a simple solution: encoding a global trade item number and product data into product web pages. With products identified in a standardized way, search engines can more easily find the right product with the right information attached to it. Consumers get robust, accurate search results, and they know exactly what they are comparing as they shop. They have access to more detailed product information, where to buy based on their location, precise product comparisons, and real-time social media reviews through the linking of relevant data. Sweetie Pie brands and Darcy's can be more confident that their products will appear in the right consumer searches with the right information, making them as appealing online as they are in the store. The use of GS1 standards revolutionized the retail world with the barcode more than 40 years ago. Now's the time to take unique GS1 identification and attributes online and ensure the best omni-channel shopping experience for consumers like Kelly.
All right, let's talk about the GTIN for a second. The GTIN, Global Trade Item Number. For many of us, and even myself, before I got into this business, I knew there was a number underneath the barcode. I didn't necessarily know what the purpose was or what the uniqueness of it was. And that is really where the heart of the matter starts. It all stems from identifying a product specifically through the global trade item number, which is recognized globally once you start moving that product. It's permanently assigned to a product, can never be reused, could be captured and encoded in several different barcodes. All right. If you remember that chart we showed before, through the supply chain, connecting the dots, we talk about a global location number as well, the GLN. Now, the GLN basically establishes a network of locations within a central registry. What that enables folks to do is to know at any time in that supply chain journey where the product is and at what location it is as they go along. Great for traceability, supply chain efficiencies to know exactly where the product is. The data accuracy that's attached to that product through the GTIN is able to be processed in a location. Great for e-com and EDI because you know exactly where it is. And we find the regulatory compliance in there as well, because each location will have its regulatory compliance attached to it. So it's identifying the product, and then it's identifying the location in which it's going to be shipped through that supply chain. All right. Now, there's a number of barcodes and applications that are out there. On the left side, the UPC, the EAN 13, which is a European article number, still the most popular one used in the world. UPC for us, a UPC, North American used, 12-digit code. They're all readable, they're all interchangeable. And on the right side, you start to see what we're familiar with QR codes and 2D codes. All right, we'll talk about that in a minute, a little bit more detail. For shipping and logistics, you've got the GS1 128 and the ITF 14, specifically used for shipping, inventory control, and logistics, not used at point of sale. All right, now, times are changing. The times have started to change where we need more information. One of the original slides I showed had the consumers looking for more information. How's the consumer going to get that information? As the digital world has expanded, everyone within that supply chain is looking for more information. How are they going to get that information in a consistent, first Canadian way and then global way? All right. Keep in mind, industry dictates what the need's going to be, right down to the type of barcode that's going to need, relevant to the information. Essentially, where we're going is to combine a linear code with a 2D code /QR/data matrix to have more information readily available within that capture. All right. So here's the difference between the 1D and the 2D holistically. EAN, UPC, the two most popular linear codes used in the world still today. All right. You can only encode so much information in that type of symbology. All right. The other aspect of it, it becomes very large when you have to go into your GS1 128, which is the long code that we saw before, because all that information resides underneath, making it difficult on packages. On the 2D end, when we look at a GS1 data matrix or a QR code with a digital link, now all of a sudden we can encode a lot more information on a very small footprint, very small. All right, we'll talk about healthcare in a couple of seconds, but that's a great example. A lot of the medical field have adopted in Canada the GS1 data matrix. Why? They want the GTIN, they want the expiry date, and they want the lot number of medical components, anything attached to the pharma world, to have more information on that product, both from a doctor-patient standpoint and for safety. All right. The generation going forward is going to be more consumer engagement, traceability, which we talk about here today in great detail, more information, easier to trace, easier to track. Now we talk about sustainability and circularity that comes into play. What and how are these materials going to be used, and what's the story behind the materials? Inventory management, the safety, both for the consumer and in the Medicare aspects, and in the improved packaging because of the very, very small footprint. They're more durable too. Linear codes tend to get a little scratch, and if they do, they can be read. A 2D code is much easier to read, much more durable. All right. So we talked about Canadian 2D initiatives so far. So far, the pharma sector has embraced the GS1 data matrix code, as well as the cannabis sector. Now, the pharma sectors were the first to initiate it. As mentioned before, need more product information, need it to be more reliable, and need a very, very small footprint on a lot of the different pharmaceutical products that are used out there. In the cannabis sector, because there's a component of medical and pharma, they've adopted the GS1 data matrix as well to be able to have scanning capability increased, very small footprint again, all right? Increased supply chain, customer safety, and traceability once again. These are the two areas right now that have been introduced in the Canadian market, in the North American market, and it's moving towards getting the rest of the CPG in. By 2027, you'll start to see more codes, more product, and the retailers being able, because you have to have the scanning capability of reading a two-dimensional code as well. So the retailers push this issue, they push the matter, it's their industry, and then the brand owners will not be obligated to change if they're still going to want to use a linear and they don't have any more information they want to publish or encode. It's not going away. But I think sooner rather than later, these folks are going to want to jump in and change their barcodes to a 2D to be able to have more information available for the consumer, for the buyers, for the retailers, for the marketplaces. All right? So that's really what it's about. So we've got this hot off the press video. You are the third group to have seen this video, just came out recently, talking a little bit about the next generation and what it's going to mean for us, the consumers.
The time has come to enable the scan of one barcode to unlock infinite possibilities for your retail business. Start leveraging product data to improve your supply chain, inventory management, and in-store processes. Gain visibility to more data to reduce manual actions and facilitate decision-making. Easily comply with regulations around the world, where the simple scan of a barcode allows you to collect, share, and act on all the information needed for transparency, sustainability, and safety. Begin enhancing your apps and loyalty programs together with 2D barcodes to create rich shopper experiences and enable greater safety and traceability. And yes, you can achieve all this while still maintaining the core function of scanning a barcode. By the end of 2027, the industry goal is that retailers worldwide will be able to process both today's linear barcodes and a defined set of 2D barcodes at point of sale. So where do you start? To begin is simple. Connect with your point of sale solution providers to assess the capabilities of your existing scanners. You may just need to perform some software upgrades to ensure the point-of-sale system receives the GS1 barcode number from the 2D barcode. If you have older scanners, new equipment that can process 2D barcodes may be needed. Once completed, you're ready to start scanning 2D barcodes. Once you can scan 2D barcodes for point-of-sale transactions, you can enhance your processes to capture and leverage even more data from these barcodes, such as batch lot or serial number for use in additional business use cases. Brand owners around the world are already implementing 2D barcodes on their products. Many retailers are doing the same with their own brand products and are upgrading their scanning equipment, systems, and business processes to leverage richer product data available through next-generation 2D barcodes. The time to start your journey and begin unlocking your infinite possibilities is now. GS1 is ready to guide you through every phase of this transition. Visit gs1.org or contact your local GS1 member organization to learn more.
All right, pretty exciting times in the barcode world, to say the least. A couple of use cases here, an example as mentioned during the video of how this came to light, and some of the other countries are a little bit ahead of us, actually. A Woolworths store in Australia, just as an example, was having issues with past due produce and so on and so forth. So they decided internally to track the incomings and outgoings of their produce section by way of putting a 2D code. That, as a matter of fact, gave them all kinds of efficiencies, much more trusted information as to when the product came in, where it came from, and at what time and place they needed to sell that product to within the time frame. So they decided that they were going to bring this up forward, and they were the instigators in Australia in introducing 2D not only as a standalone operating system within the Woolworth stores, everywhere nationally, they're now using 2D codes for CPG goods. Same in Brazilian. It came about, they had all kinds of food waste in their bakeries. All kinds of food waste. Didn't have any tracking, so on and so forth. So inventory control management was done through the help of 2D codes, which came up the ladder, and many, many people in Brazil, operations of all kinds and all sectors are using 2D. And finally, another great example of 7-Eleven in Thailand. They actually had a customer complaint. They have a lot of prepared foods. And in that prepared foods, they didn't necessarily have the best before dates all lined up. Well, they had somebody complain because the food wasn't very good. And as a result, they turned around and instilled 2D barcodes to be able to track from the time the products come in to prepare those prepared meals to the time they were sold, so that you knew exactly when to sell the product and in what time frame. So different applications, but really at the end of the day, tracking, traceability, inventory control management. All right, so those are the cases that are there, more on the CPG, food, and hard lines. As we mentioned, cannabis and pharma already applying it. Okay. Milena, any questions on 2D barcodes, new, old, where we're going?
No questions in the chat so far, but if people have a question, they can also unmute themselves. Feel free to do that.
Perfect. All right, good. Let's talk about export. We talk about trade, how it all fits in, staying in the same vein. Some considerations and impacts. We'll look briefly at business regs, industry specifics, packaging, claims, and FTs, which we talked about a little before. FESMA 204 regulations for shipping in the States, and ESG initiatives, along with the EU digital product passports, which are being introduced this year and in the coming years. All right. So it all starts with knowing your regulations, whether you're going to be sending your product regionally, provincially, or nationally in Canada. We always encourage you to make sure your products in whichever sector are properly in compliance with the local, regional, provincial, and federal regulations. Industry associations, too, we throw in here, are also a great help in making sure you're in full compliance. Same applies if you're wanting to move a product out of country. If you use the model that you're used to in Canada and making sure that your regulations are up to snuff, we always encourage taking the same approach elsewhere, either through brokers or distributors, or yourself if you're dealing with a distributor or a retailer outside the country, to get to find out through what you know in Canada what is needed elsewhere. All right, so your industry specific requirements. Same applies here, whether you're in food, healthcare, consumer goods, or cannabis. The sector that you're in is going to dictate. Now, if you're fully functional here in Canada and you've got things all lined up, we always encourage to take the same approach elsewhere and get to see what you'll need to tweak to be able to be in compliance outside the country. Same applies for packaging and labeling. We know the requirements here in Canada. These are the requirements for the 4 basic or major group sections. So you use the same template, find out what's needed in your exporting country, and you'll be able to be in compliance. In Canada, as we know, all items need to be bilingual. Everything needs to be bilingual from A to Z. Find out in the other countries what they look for, what the prerequisites are, and you identify your products accordingly. Same applies for claims and certifications. If you have a claim or you are certified, ensure that it's properly listed, properly visible, and as you enter your product information, that you make sure that it is a certification, puts the onus on yourself, and puts you in that standing of having a claim or a certification attached to your product. And again, making sure it's bilingual in Canada and finding out what the requirements are outside the country. All right? Nutrition facts tables. A few years ago, they changed the look, put some emphasis on different areas. So you want to make sure your nutrition facts tables are up to snuff. And again, use that template when you're sending your product elsewhere to see if it's acceptable or you need to change something. Often enough, it's just a language. All right? Front of pack regulations, same thing here. We introduced this. This is going in full effect Jan 1st, 2026. You're seeing in your stores a lot more of these black and white, not very sexy front of pack labels, to say the least. But the brand manufacturers who have content of saturated fat, sugars, and or sodium must identify those on the front of pack using the Health Canada label. All right? This has been in existence in Europe for about 4 or 5 years now already. And so if you're going to be moving product into Europe, you'll most likely be asked to have your front of pack regulations all set up. Okay, for our friends in the States who are causing us a few headaches right now, down the road, you will be asked to have and to respect the Food Safety Modernization Act, which was instilled in 2011. All right. And the Section 204, which is the new section added, really pertains to enhanced traceability rules. So we're back to that traceability aspect. Focuses on certain high-risk foods. We'll show you the list after. It's going to require more detailed record keeping. All right. The overall objective, detailed record keeping, tracking of food products to ensure traceability and prevent foodborne illnesses. That's the overall objective. How and what needs to be tracked? There's a food traceability list that's available through the US FDA. There are 2 key areas: the critical tracking events, key data elements. And they're both used in different areas, but this is what's going to need to be tracked as you go along. This is the list that FDA has compiled, all right, which have the risk assessments attached to it. So anyone moving these types of food products to the States, highly recommend getting your record keeping up to date. GS1's role in this is through our platform, have those attributes available so you can record keep all that information so that if you ever get asked by the FDA, it's readily available. All right? Here's an example using wild caught tuna. Where does it start? What needs to be critically assessed? Right from the fishing vessel, through the receiver, to the processor, to the distributor, to the restaurant. Those are the critical tracking events through those 4 different steps. All right? And then your key data elements are all kept within those 4 responsibilities. So these folks need to record keep their side of the bargain, their side of the responsibility as that fish or seafood or tuna goes through the different processes. All right? FDA rules this in the States. So what's the compliance requirement? What does a business need to do if they're in these sectors? Keep detailed records, maintain traceability plans, submit records electronically within 24 hours when requested by the FDA. All right? And the plan needs to include certain details attached. Okay? Now, from a compliance date and extension standpoint, it was to be implemented January 2026, but that was not possible as the folks in the industry were not ready to be able to compile that information. So that has since been extended to July 2028. All right? What does this mean for businesses? No changes to requirements, preparation for full implementation should continue. So if you're in one of these sectors, we encourage continuing to set up your tracking records, because sooner or later it's going to be mandated, and you could be asked at any time for record keeping on your specific products. All right? Now, let's talk about the Europe side of things, the digital product passport. What is a digital product passport? It's an electronic record that contains product-specific information about a physical product's life cycle. This becomes very important for specific sectors that you're in, all right? So the key components: product origin, material composition, manufacturing process, your sustainability metrics, your repair and disassembly, and recycling and disposal. This is part of the European CETA, the commercial trade agreements that are being done between the countries in Europe, between the UK, and now going international by 2027. So at the end of the day, that digital product passport is going to be needed and will be mandatory for you to move products from, let's say, Canada into European destinations. Okay, so it is an electronic record keeping data. You're going to say, where do we fit in? Here we go again with a 2D barcode. Why the 2D? We're able to encode a lot of information, data, throughout the process. So in this example here, you've got a textile manufacturer. All right. What are you going to need? You're going to need the sustainable use, the recycling, the materials, the supply chain, and the manufacturing production. That information is going to reside on and captured by a 2D code. All right, the GS1 digital link. And that information will be able to be read and scanned for everyone in the supply chain. All right. How we support international trade. We talked about a few of the elements there. One of the first ones that come into play, the simplified customs clearance process. The information that is identified directly on the product, i.e., I go back to the GTIN, the Global Trade Item Number, makes it much easier for someone in a customs clearinghouse to have access to that information, all right, and to be able to justify and properly assess the customs clearing codes, knowing exactly the product, where it's from, what the materials are, so on and so forth. It enhances the product identification because they're uniquely identified, both either by GTIN or a GLN with the locations. It improves the data accuracy and sharing. Keep in mind, a lot of this data is shared by many people throughout the supply chain. It now brings the regulatory compliance aspects in. So if that product is going into a country and the data attached clearly states the compliance records for that country going in, makes it a whole lot easier to move those products through customs. And in the efficient supply chain operation, goes without saying, there are no hiccups. The product moves freely through the supply chain. All right. Any questions on this, Milena?
I don't think it was on this particularly, but there is a question. So somebody's asking if on the front of the package label, is there a certain limit to what's listed? For example, like one had 3 warnings and the other one had just 1.
Yeah, let me quickly go back up. It's going to take a second and we can have a look at that, and I can, okay. While the rule is laid out, if you have in your 5 first ingredients saturated fat and or sugars and or sodium, the label needs to be on there. The popcorn, as an example here, has the fat and the sugars. It's not a high content of sodium. So the sodium is, it's there, but it's there as a third option. If you look at the honey swirls, only sugars are there. So no trans fat and no sodium in your first 5 ingredients. And if you look at the cookies, only the saturated fat comprise the first 5 components or ingredients of those cookies. So only the popcorn has all 3. The honey swirls, it's only sugars, and the cookies only trans fat.
Okay.
All right. So either or, all 2 out of the 3, or all 3, or
Okay.
none. And if there's none, you don't need to put the front of pack label.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Let me go back down to where we were. Any other questions for now?
No, I think that was it.
Okay, how we tie in ESG. Very briefly on this, what our role is, once again, ties into regulatory. All right. So how we track the information from a circularity standpoint is straightforward. Once again, it's the attributes within the systems attached to a product, capturing empty package weights, so we know exactly what the weight content empty, tracking packing material components, right? Your bubble wraps and your plastics or your wood, that comes into play. Streamlining the blue box reporting, all right? What needs to be recycled, what doesn't need to be recycled. And the future always starts with the data. And I can't put enough emphasis on that, because that's what folks are looking for. Regulatory bodies, brand owners, right through to the retailers are looking for that circularity data. And that comes in with the ESG initiatives that are being introduced throughout Canada and the world, as a matter of fact. So for us in Canada, the plan is to move to zero plastics waste by 2030. That's aggressive, but this is what we're being told. Throughout that circular economy, who and what is impacted as that circles through. All right? Now, what's our role? The role at GS1 is to standardize the accurate data to make sure we're all talking about the same language when we talk about net weight, when we talk about material. Have it laid out in a way that all the brand owners, all distributors, all retailers have the same access to the same information laid out in a standardized, accurate way. All right? Deposit return schemes are an example. Aluminum, consignment processes, let's say in Alberta, and it started in Ontario a little bit more. Certainly in Quebec, that's been together for a long time. Well, the platform, through that standardizing accurate data, has those check marks in there for consignment and for your 5 and 10 cent returns and so on, because the retailers know, and the brand owners will need to know if they're selling product, let's say in Quebec, there's a 10 cent consignment fee refund that is charged and able to be recaptured after by the consumer. But they need to have that information in there to be able to properly charge and filter that consignment or return scheme, in this particular example, in Quebec. All right, your plastics and packaging reporting, which we talked about. The golden design rules, again, for brand owners, that becomes important. If you could substitute a product or a material with something that's either recyclable or can optimize through time, then you do. And a federal plastics registry is something optimal that they're looking to have, so that on the federal end, they know exactly what their registries through plastics are going to be. All right. Any questions on that?
Yes, and I just want to make it clear. ESG, it stands for environment, social, and then G was governance.
Governance.
Was it? Okay, perfect.
Governance.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. And do you have any questions on that before we move to the last section?
No questions.
Okay, how we put this all together in the GS1 world is looking at the tools and the resources for success. Where it all starts, we come right back to one of our first slides, the identification of the product, barcoding the product specifically, uniquely, and accurately. The knowledge around that product is the power. The great data, which we talked about, is key, picture-perfect products. We won't talk too much about the pictures and the imaging today, but that's part and parcel as well. And then you get ready to trade. What that means for us, I alluded to platforms before, systems, which is what we used in our world. So my GS1 is the platform, the dashboard that a subscriber gets as a brand owner. If some of you are already GS1 subscribers, you're familiar with the screen. That is your personal dashboard. All right. And this is what it looks like when you log in. You're going to have your tools, your billing, and all the rest of the services that you might have. So how do you manage your GTINs? This is where they get created. You get allotted your GTINs based on the subscription package. You establish your packaging, your casing, how it's going to be sold, and you manage the assignment of your GTINs on the platform. From there, the management tool that's used is what we call ProSync. ProSync is the software that enables you to load your information and everything attached to it, uploaded to a registry. Registry being accessible by all the trading partners throughout the GS1 Canada registry. All right, the speed, data quality, operational efficiency. Again, always looking at the details attached to that product through attributes, through the platform, through consistency, through global standards. Once that ProSync is enabled, now all of a sudden in this example, you see an ABC Inc. and you'll see the trading partner requirement. What are they going to need from you in terms of information and content? So that resides on your dashboard as you go along. So as you grow your business, as you scale, you'll get more trading partners. As you get more trading partners, there's different requirements from trading partners. One could be an online trading partner like Amazon. Another one could be a retail outlet like in the food industry, a Loblaw or a Canadian Tire. They're going to need specific information from you, and it all derives from the registry. All right? These are the types of industry managed solutions that are offered as you grow your business and as per your trading partner needs. From your new item setup, which is what we just talked about through ProSync, nutritional content, e-com content, specific content needed for marketplaces, planogram content, typical for merchandising at the retail end, marketing content, food service, and you're in the food service, pharma, ECC net recalls, and incident reporting, which again, all have to do with traceability and tracking of your products through that supply chain. All these services basically make it very efficient to trace and track and for whatever reason, recall the product. All right? Registry, 150 retailers and buyers. It's about 900,000 products right now that we have in the registry throughout Canada. All right? Couldn't stress enough through our time here today the importance of accurate and complete data. That's what folks are looking for. The consumer is looking for this, the buyers, the retailers, the distributors, anyone moving a product is looking for accurate, complete data. And these are the perils that could prevail if they're not up to snuff. And you certainly don't want any of these as you're trying to move your product regionally, nationally, internationally. This is what working without a registry looked like and used to look like. Don't get yourself fooled by the brand owners on the left and the size of them. Whether you have 1, 2, or 3 products, or 1, 2, 3, or 5,000 products, the process is the same. In the olden days, the brand owners were all talking to each individual retailer individually, giving information about their product, and something there was zero consistency. So you ran into governance and retailers and data management issues. Image and data standards were not met. You had inconsistent content, no French translation. And if it was, it wasn't accurate or wasn't properly identified. And you had incorrect dims and weights. So it just caused a lot of issues, both for the brand owner, because they have to do this with each retailer, and obviously the retailers having to get information left, right, and center with no standard. This is what it looks like when you use a registry. Everyone's talking the same language. It's perpetually cleansed data entered once by the brand owner and accessible by all. So everyone's talking the same language. It makes it much easier, much more efficient. So I can't stress enough the importance of the data component. Okay. We always include some bookmarks and resource links for you. I know it's a lot of information to capture in, 45 minutes or so, but you'll get a copy of the presentation. We've got bookmarks on here for you to keep. And we are at the question period of the presentation. Milena, any questions?
So no questions in the chat, but if anybody does have a question, they can also feel free to unmute themselves. Also, do you have, okay, perfect. Your email's included in there because I know you said you offer consultation. So yeah, if anybody also doesn't feel comfortable asking questions here, then you could also meet with Alain one-on-one.
Absolutely. Drop me an email and we'll certainly answer. And it could be specific to your business or sector or just generic. It's a little bit tough sometimes to cover all aspects, but we tried here based on Melanie's criteria and what we discussed to try and put the emphasis on where we're at and really put the focus on traceability, which all comes back to product identification and the data attached to it.
Mm-hmm. I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So if I'm a small a small business and I want to get into a store, would it make sense for me to go through you to get my one product? Not thinking that maybe I might expand in the future, but looking at my right now needs. And if we didn't go through you, how could I get my product into a store otherwise?
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. The more and more that we advance, Melanie, the more standard the information is going to be needed. And I'm going to give you a marketplace omni-channel example in Amazon. Very straightforward. Let's not even go to the retail outlet right now. Marketplace. Amazon ran into all kinds of problems during the pandemic of having inaccurate products listed on their site, which means that someone would order a green t-shirt and get a pair of shoes at their door. Now, why is that? First and foremost, digital robotic systems don't read product. They read barcodes and numbers. So if the product was not allocated the right barcode or someone used somebody else's barcode, you've got a legitimate issue. So Amazon has made it mandatory for listing products to have a GS1 GTIN to eliminate the confusion, much like we had in the video. Now, for a retailer, once they make their product pitches, and we'll go to the small business, they're going to be asked for a product identification code and a licensed barcode right there and then, because they're going to want to get the information on the product. Does that mean they can't get into a corner store to sell their product? No, they could. But anywhere they're going to scale up and bring that product into a more regional or a larger retail store, they're going to need a legitimate GTIN to be able to get their product in the store. It helps in the credibility, Melanie, and the reputation of coming in properly prepared. Otherwise, you'll need to go back with your packaging, redo your packaging, get a proper barcode, fill in all the compliance areas, and so on and so forth. So if you're serious and you've got some people that are listening and want your product, it's especially at that retail end, you're going to need a GTIN.
Thank you.
Is it mandatory to sell your product on your own website or at a farmer's market, or you're dabbling to find out if there's any interest in your product? No, we don't. We don't. If you have it and you want to start using it because you want to identify, great. But if you're not absolutely ready and 100% sure that's really the product you're going to move, I don't encourage getting subscription because you're going to pay for those licenses. And if you're not necessarily ready or need to change 2-3 times along the way, you're going to need a lot of GTNs in your subscription package.
Okay, that's perfect. That'll help those that are wondering.
Yeah, just on the fence type of thing, not an absolute must, but keep in mind as you want to scale and grow and get into more important retailers, they're going to ask you for a legitimate license barcode.
All right. I think that's it for questions. I included, perfect. I included a couple upcoming webinars and events that we have going on in the next couple of weeks and months. So thank you to everybody who joined this webinar. And thank you again, Alain. This was a very insightful presentation. And thank you for your time. Hopefully we will see you online again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you both, Melanie, Milena. Merci
Thank
beaucoup.
you so much, Alain. Merci.
you.
See you next time.